I'd like to ask to stand and be recognized David Wolfers of James Potts and Wolfers, Inc., and Dave James of Tulsa Wealth Advisors, Raymond James. Let's give them a round of applause. And of course, we encourage you to do business with your fellow Rotarians. And let's again please thank all of our sponsors for today. Okay. We've got some committee meetings today above and beyond room 234, classifications 233, and Rotary Foundation 232. And in announcements, word reached us this week of the passing last Wednesday of former member Hayden Hyde in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and services were held in Claiborne, Texas. I hope that those of you who knew Hayden will extend your personal sympathies to his wife, Maureen. And on behalf of the club, we extend condolences to John Johnson on the passing of his wife, Nan. That was this past weekend, and services are at 3 p.m. tomorrow at Boston Avenue. Cards are on your tables for expressing your sympathies to John. And this message today from Margaret about Ron Butler and his transplant recovery. And here's what she says. Excellent report. Only addition is that once released, he will become an outpatient acute rehab patient, and even when we can finally come home, he will continue rehab until no longer needed. What a trooper he is. Thanks to everyone's support and prayers, he's getting better every day. Amazing progress he's made since we almost lost him. And that's from Margaret. And we have some project announcements. Joy Longmire.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our outbound student for from our international committee. Cole Stringer is here today, and Cole is going to be heading to Germany on Monday. So be sure and wish him well. John Howland is going to serve as his outbound counselor, and John, I believe, is on vacation. And we have another outbound student, and she has a seat, and she has a place with her name, but I believe she got the wrong time in an email to appear, so hopefully she'll be here a little later. But her name is Courtney Baker, and she is leaving, I believe, on the 22nd for France, and I am excited to serve as her outbound counselor. We also have as our guest today Miss Ellie Duff, and she is the lovely daughter of our very own Tricia Kirkstra, and she was an outbound student in 2010, 2011, and went to a lovely small city in France and had a wonderful experience. And we have, he's in town, but he's not here. Again, I think the email thing. We have an inbound student here from Germany, Mark Borner. And he may show up, and hopefully he will, and we'll all get to welcome him very warmly. And of course, all of you are probably familiar with Nick Wayland. He has been fortunate enough to spend this past year in Italy, and we're delighted that he's here today to give us a little brief summary of his time spent in Italy. So let's welcome Nick Wayland.
Buongiorno. My name's Nick Wayland. I went to Italy, up north, about an hour north of Milan, in a state called Como, as you guys know, my face on Skype. Yeah, I'd just like to say it was absolutely amazing. Met incredible people, had amazing families, got to travel around a lot. But just like one thing, I guess the biggest thing I learned over there was taking new risks and making new experiences of it. One of them was playing a new sport over there in rugby. Never played it, didn't know the language, and just kind of went on the high wire and was like, I'm going to do it. So went and played rugby, ended up playing about 15 games, played with the professional team a little bit, and ended up meeting my best friends in the entire world through the program, through the sport. and just like to thank all you guys for that, giving me the opportunity to live a year of my life in Italy, meeting great people, learning a new sport, becoming fluent in the language. I could stand here for hours, and thank you guys with everything. But if it wasn't for you guys sponsoring us, all of us, and if it wasn't for the youth exchange program, we wouldn't be able to do this. So just like to end that, thank you very much, and had an amazing time.
Terry Heritage is going to tell us about Adopt a Class fundraiser. Terry?
Thank you, President Karen. Good afternoon, generous Rotarians. I'm back. 7 years. It's now 7 years that I've asked for your help for Celia Clinton School, our Adopt a Class program. What we do, this is the little flyer on your table, so if you'll read that. Whatever donation you care to give, nothing is too small, nothing is too large. So we put it all together and we give each one of the teachers, there's 37, 2 gift certificates, one for Walmart and one for the Apple Tree Learning Center. It's a very poor school, as we know. They don't have a rich PTA that can help them, so we are just like their PTA. Every year, there's one Rotarian that always comes out of the chute first, and that's Matt Davis. He's already adopted a class with his lovely fiancée, Becky, and I think I gave her a new title, but
Announcement.
but I'm very, very grateful to Matt. And I would just like to take be sure and put Adopt a Class on your checks when you write them. I would like to ask everyone in this room who has ever given to Adopt a Class in the past 7 years to please stand to be recognized. There's so many of you. Don't be shy, please. Thank you, and I'll be back next year.
Thanks, Terry. And there are invitations by the name badges for the Global Vision Awards Dinner, which is September 24th, and our club is going to be honored for our international projects, and we would love to have a great showing from our club. So those are sitting out on a table out there. Becky Collins, where's Becky? So she'll be out with those after the meeting. So if anybody wants to grab an invitation, we'd love to have you come. All right, thank you on that. And Jack Carney, please come down to the front. He's from Southside Rotary, and they put together the Henry Bellman Sustainability Awards. It is an incredible project, and I believe in supporting other Rotarians' projects, and this is one of the best in the country. Jack?
Thank you. The Henry Bellman Sustainability Awards, put on by Southside Rotary, is coming up September the 12th of this year. Thank you, Karen, for allowing us to come and talk to you today. Karen has actually been a judge for the Henry Bellman Sustainability Awards since its inception. This is our 4th year in having the awards. The awards promote and recognize responsible economic growth in an intergenerational way. We have 2 award winners from last year, I think, here today. Matt Newman with Covanta won the Henry Bellman Award last year, and INCOG is here somewhere. There he is. INCOG won last year as well for Quality of Life Award. So good to see you guys again. All the funds that are derived from the event and from the gala are used for sustainable projects here in the local area. We encourage you to go to, I put a BellmanAwards.com sheet on all the tables. For further information, please go to that. And we also have a booth. Well, we have a table out front that has information as well. We do have sponsorships, and we do have tickets available for September the 12th, and we appreciate your consideration and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And I have been missing this man's giggle. Past President Tom Klinda, please come up and tell us about a social event scheduled for August 22nd.
Thank you, President Karen. And first of all, you are off to a terrific start. Let's hear it for Karen. And you and your social chair, Marty Alexander, planned a lot of fun events, and I'm here to announce the first one. August 22nd, everybody pull out their smartphone, iPhones. August 22nd is Rotary Night at the Movies. At the cinema, the movie starts at 7:30, happy hour is 6:30, and the movie is 20 feet from stardom. That's how I feel right now, 20 feet from stardom. But it's not about me. It's about the backup singers, a true story about the backup singers for some of the greatest singers. Rotten Tomatoes. If you want to find out if the movie's good or bad, go to Rotten Tomatoes website. This rated 99 out of 100, so it's a must-see. So total cost, $22 per person, happy hour, movie. Here's part of the trailer. Come join us August 22nd.
Oh, boy. All right, let's enjoy that. That's going to be a good time for all. Thank you, Tom. You didn't giggle for me. Okay. Just then, I could hear it. I could hear it. Richard Gibbs, would you please come tell us about another Club Foundation grant?
I'm here to award a check for $5,000 to the Town and Country School from all of you. And Loretta Keller, who's the executive director, will tell you what she's going to do with this money that we are giving her.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very honored and pleased to be here today to say thank you for your very generous donation to Town and Country School and partnering with us and with our school. 52 years ago, Lillian Whitmore, a clinical psychologist, identified children who weren't successful in the normal, regular classroom. These children had learning differences and identified that with a little more individualized attention, smaller classes, these children could be successful and live a very productive life. And so that's what we do at Town and Country. Our kids come to us with a medical diagnosis of a learning difference, and we provide for them a very individualized program. We work one-on-one with them. We help get them up to grade level so that our goal is that they can graduate and be able to live a very productive life as well. Some go on to college, some go on to VOTEC, some go into a career. So that's our goal with our kids. And the money that you have given us is to help us with our kitchen renovation. We've identified some of our kids that may not go on to college, that may choose to acquire work skills. And so we're renovating our kitchen to be able to provide more life skills classes. We'll turn it into a classroom for our children and also be able to offer more nutritious lunches for those kids.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And congratulations.
Thank you. We'd love for you to come visit our school anytime. We'd love to show it off.
And now, there are our students. Welcome. And I know you got a little different. Just wave to everybody. You're here now. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Yay. We know why you were late. It wasn't your fault, so no worries. All right. Janet Rockefeller. Sarge is here.
And I got an email that said wear my badge on the right-hand side, and yours is on your left?
I
Should
don't
I
know my
find
right
her?
from my left.
It's a fine. All righty. How's everybody else doing?
Thank you, Janet.
Don't kill me. Okay, I'm ready to go. Thanks, John. Okay, the person that I caught this week was Mark Graham. He was in the newspaper for United Way, naturally, and he was talking about creating an emerging leaders society. It's to create a new generation of community leaders, and he indicated that this will help ensure a successful future for the Tulsa community, and that rocks. I think that's really great. So for birthdays, lots of birthdays in August, mine too. I will pay a fine later. Beth Donica paid $50 for her birthday. No, $39 for her birthday, and then $11 for her in honor of her son Alex. So happy birthday!
Hey, Beth.
And Luann is $53, and it goes to the Crescendo Awards. Congratulations on that. Okay, Phil Lakin is not here, but he's giving $144.11 because 14,411 feet is the elevation of Mount Rainier, which is what he's climbing today and tomorrow. So good luck, Phil. So hopefully we'll see him next week. Don't know. Okay, and thank you for appreciating that I went to all the trouble to put the mountains on that slide. Thank you. Yes. Okay, and then Matt Bristow, $50 for your birthday. Happy birthday. That's a wonderful
Hey,
picture. You
Matt.
don't look like you're 49. Rob Berry, next. Okay, he paid $50, and it breaks down as follows. $2 for his Rotary anniversary, $1 for his granddaughter's first birthday. Aw. $35 for his wedding anniversary. The remaining $12 is a bonus for the foundation. So thank you very much. And finally, Tom Klinda, $100 to the Club Foundation, $58 for his birthday, and $42 for the first 42 days of being past president. Rock on. Thanks a lot. Have a good week.
That's pretty good, Tom. Pretty good. Well, you guys, we have a benefactor today for our speaker. And I want to tell you about Dr. Richard Presley. And if you wouldn't mind, stand up and wave to everybody. Dr. Presley has a growing chain of retail optical shops. They're in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas. And he, inspired by his 6 children, started a youth ministry that's grown to over 500 children in West Tulsa. And those 22 acres of land in West Tulsa are now full of blueberries. You can actually pick or just buy them from the fruit stand. Those dollars support the medical missions led by Dr. Presley's oldest son, as well as many of his employees. And you could easily say that Dr. Presley is a visionary on all fronts. And because of his love of the family's vacation community in Seaside, Florida, created by our speaker's firm, Dr. Presley was inspired to take his land and dedicate it to the creation of an out-of-box neighborhood sure to energize and transform West Tulsa. I want to thank you for sharing your architect team with us today and letting us meet some of your family and employees and allowing us to be the place that you roll out your concept. So we are delighted. Thank you. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Now, Delise Tomlinson is our Rotarian of the Day, and Delise was a practicing city planner in the Tulsa metro area for 15 years before joining a private development firm in 2008. Then, when the Tulsa Regional Chamber included downtown as a core economic development initiative, they hired Delise in 2010 as its executive director of downtown development, and she took off running. Delise received her master's in architectural urban studies from OU Tulsa in 2005 and is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Delise joined our club in this past May. Please welcome Rotarian of the Day, Delise Tomlinson.
Thank you, President Keith. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this or something, Rotarian of the Day. It's fun. I am so honored and very pleased and appreciate being asked to introduce our guest today, Elizabeth Liz, as she says to be called, Plater-Zyberk, and I understand that's a Polish name, and she told me the correct pronunciation. I wasn't even going to attempt it. Is one of the world's most well-known proponents of smart growth, sustainable development, and community planning. She brings a unique and highly sought expertise to planning at every scale, from the village to the campus, to the town, and to the city. Plater-Zyberk is a founding principal of Duane, Plater-Zyberk and Company, and Dean of the University of Miami School of Architecture, recognized worldwide for its suburb and town design program that she created in 1988. She is a founder and emerita board member of the Congress for the New Urbanism, established in 1993, the same year that the New York Times characterized New Urbanism as the most important phenomenon to emerge in American architecture in the post-Cold War era. Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk has been awarded several honorary doctorates and awards, including the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Medal of Architecture, the Vincent J. Scully Prize, the Richard H. Dreyhaus Prize, and the Seaside Prize for contributions to community planning and design. Her publications include, get your pens and paper ready, if you don't know this already, The New Civic Art, Suburban Nation, The Rise of Sprawl and the Decline of the American Dream, and I decided not to be shameless and bring mine for a personal autograph. Independent for Life, Homes and Neighborhoods for an Aging America, and the Form-Based Code, AIA, the Architect's Handbook for Professional Practice. And that was just in her free time. She remains actively involved in master planning and co-development. Her projects local to Florida include those for downtown Doral, downtown Stewart, downtown West Palm Beach, love the downtown word there, and downtown Kendall. Most recently, she spearheaded the overhaul of the zoning code for the city of Miami, Miami 21, known as the largest example of a form-based code, which was approved in 2010. And then also of note, Dwayne Plater-Zyberk and company first received international recognition in the 1980s as a designer of Seaside, Florida, and has completed designs and codes for over 200 towns, new towns, regional plans, and community revitalization projects, which are all relevant to the work that she's going to be doing here. And then Karen also noted and pointed out to me that Ms. Plater-Zyberk's firm did the Atlantis condominium development, which was featured prominently in the opening credits of Miami Vice. And unfortunately, we do not have that theme song queued up to welcome our wonderful honoree and guest speaker, Elizabeth Liz. Thank you so much for coming.
That was such a long introduction that I'm afraid I'm going to have to zoom through the talk, through the slides. And I need to make one correction, which you wouldn't know about, which is I'm no longer the dean. After 18 years, I've departed to become a regular faculty member and go back to doing more work. Much of what you just heard, of course, involves many people in the work. Community building involves always the whole community, of course, but many people with various kinds of expertise. And so today the team includes Paul Crabtree, who was introduced earlier, from Paul Crabtree Associates, with whom we've done a number of projects. He's an engineer who does gentle engineering. It's kind to the land and speaks to resilience and sustainability. And so we've shared many projects happily. You know, I was thinking about the fact that when we started out many years ago, the word urban was a bad word. If you said that anything was urban or that you were interested in urban issues, it usually meant things that people were concerned about and didn't know what to do with, like poverty and crime. And in the past 30 years, we've really crossed an enormous threshold in which we've come to understand that we can manage the built environment, much as we sometimes manage the natural environment, and that that environment for nature and for people can be one of good health and indeed high value. So let me start with a few slides. And I'm really going to do a bit of a gallop just to give you a broad picture of what has happened really since Seaside, the developing of ideas, and many of these ideas and principles that are in play in your own city, no doubt, in your own cities and towns, and indeed throughout the world as we contend with population growth, climate change, and evolving economic issues. So There has been developed an enormous literature. I'm just showing some of the books that have been done by many smart growthers and new urbanists. And if anyone wants to know any more about anything that I'm showing, if you write what it is that you're interested on the back of your business card, I'll try to follow up after this talk, including the books. So I went too quickly. I guess I didn't. Okay. There are a number of organizations. Also, I don't expect you to read the fine print here, but the Smart Growth America, the Congress for the New Urbanism, the U.S. Green Building Council, the Form-Based Code Institute. These are a number of organizations that have grown up, that have been growing the field of knowledge and are indeed a support system for the private and non-for-profit and public sector working on community building. Our own charter for the new urbanism takes you through 27 principles from the scale of the region to the detail of the building in setting out some principles and values. I will not deal with the regional scale today. I'm going to focus on neighborhood design, what most of us can most easily experience or hope to have some effect on, and indeed the scale at which we're working with the Presley family. But it all comes back to what is, in effect, a large regional issue, the decanting of our cities largely since World War II, and the expansion of the suburbs. And for a long time, people didn't realize this was an interrelated phenomenon. Now, if you hear about Detroit, for instance, if you're doing the reading about what's going on there, you'll see that there is indeed a lot of wealth in the metropolitan Detroit area. It's all outside of the city limits of the old city, but it's still the same place in a sense. And so this kind of interrelationship between downtown and the edges is a very important issue. And so as the first part of the charter for the new urbanism says, what we are trying to do is to solve the problem of urban disinvestment and suburban sprawl, which are an interrelated phenomenon. Early on, we tried to understand it through diagramming and drawings. Architects, of course, are visual and understand things visually, and we began to understand, in fact, that there was never any kind of bad intention in making the mess that we are dealing with, but there were very good intentions about expanding the city. One item, let's say one shopping. Now, I'm sorry, I'm facing one slide because I need to see these, and I'll be pointing to these, but you'll see the same thing, obviously, on the other one. The yellow being the city, and all the little things around it are the shopping center that's added, the housing subdivision, the school, and so on, and eventually it becomes much larger than the downtown. On the right is the European model, which maybe some of our recent European travelers have seen, where growth was managed much more, let's say, restrictively, where villages, if you fly over Germany, you'll see villages surrounded by farmland, not by suburban sprawl. And so we've been looking to worldwide examples to understand what we could do better. This diagram is a kind of ideal picture of what the city is made of, what is the metropolis made of, and we've identified neighborhoods, districts, and corridors. I won't go into elaborate definitions of these, but suffice it to say that one of the things we had to come up with in the last couple of decades was a lexicon, a kind of a language in which everyone uses the same words. Village means one thing, town means something else. Highway is one thing, road is something else. And there was a kind of confusion about what all these things we were working with. And gradually these organizations have been understanding that working with cities and with this kind of metropolitan picture really does require, it may not be hard science, but requires the discipline of a discipline in which the words are agreed upon and the principles are agreed upon. So the drawing on the far left, many of you may have seen this over the years, shows suburban sprawl above and the traditional town pattern below. And what you'll notice is primarily the characteristic of connectivity. Instead of separate developments, item by item, there's a kind of interconnectedness of the traditional way of building places, and that had to do with when people walked, before we had cars, and this whole idea of mobility and connectivity as an important aspect of community. It is a lot easier to build that suburban model. You can build your housing subdivision separately from the shopping center developer that's developing his or her land, and the gas station is done by somebody else, and so on. But it doesn't come together in a sustainable and interconnected way. And so the drawings developed to become part of this system that I was just telling you about. So let's talk about the neighborhood as an increment of urban growth. And you will find that the 5 principles that I will set out now describe probably a number of the older places in town, including your most highly valued neighborhoods, let's say from the 19-teens or 20s, which was the last great moment of community building before the last couple of decades. So it's important to have a center and an edge, someplace that you recognize as the focus of the community. That's Forest Hills on the left, which is a new town from the teens in the Bronx, and a New England Village, where the green was that focus for all of the community activities. The edge helps to identify who's in the group and who's not. The quarter-mile radius, the 5-minute walk, which was developed empirically when BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, was being put in San Francisco many years ago. There's an understanding that people will walk a certain distance for whether to get to transit or to daily conveniences. And the picture of the 2 older ladies in Winter Park, Florida, points out that there are large components of your life as a young person and as an older person where you may not want to be driving, and therefore a walkable environment, that interconnectivity and the right detailing is important. You know, there's a phenomenon that has been remarked upon recently, which is that there's some large percentage, almost 20% of driving age young people are not getting driver's licenses. From the adults in this room, who would have ever thought that that day would come? But there is an understanding that urban life, that sustainability and resilience can be achieved without the car. A mixing of uses in a finely grained way, mixing in the building or from one building to the next, as in, you see Georgetown on the left, Woodstock, Vermont on the right. And very important, this is why Paul is with us, the street network designed and detailed for pedestrian comfort. One of the principles that we often talk about is the average block perimeter being no larger than 1/4 of a mile. A block that's too long will make a piece of city less walkable. The turning radii at the intersections, the wide enough sidewalk, trees and cars parked to protect the pedestrian, frequent doors and windows to make you feel safe on the sidewalk. And finally, the focus of civic places. The post office has been very important in communities over the years, and every time we hear that something's happening to the Postal Service, we get worried about that. But of course, places of worship and gathering like this today are important as well. So, not to spend a lot of time on Seaside, it's crossed its 30th anniversary. It has spawned neighborhoods and wise planning along its part of the Panhandle in Florida. And what you see is a series of, it's a small town really, individual buildings, mixing of uses from the commercial center out to various densities of housing, and most importantly of all, a public frontage to the beach. The beach was not privatized, as it has been in many other places in Florida. Before all these principles were in effect codified or articulated, what we were thinking about was the shape of the urban space, the interior design, in a sense, of the street or the square. And that which is, of course, the way many of you've seen Europe recently. You remember the streets and squares that make you feel so good to be in them because they're actually intentionally made. They're not the leftovers. In the US, the streets are leftover space after the buildings are put in a sense. In the European mode, that space is intentional. These photographs of Seaside we'd not be able to take anymore because it's completely overgrown by trees and the natural landscape which grew up once the buildings were there to protect the trees, the native trees, from the sea breezes, the sea winds. And so it's a very good example of how the built environment and nature are interacting beneficially. It was produced, we didn't design a single building there. We produced the plan and this code that you see on the left, and this idea that you might be able to set out the rules of what you do want rather than many zoning codes have been written in order to prevent bad things from happening. We started writing codes that invite good things to happen, and that became the traditional neighborhood district code on the right, and eventually the SMART code, which provides a regulatory framework, a kind of template from region to building, neighborhood district and corridor in the center part of it, which is now being used throughout the country, being tailored for communities in various places, and it's based on a theory which evolved from our interactions with the environmental community called the transect, which speaks to a variety of environments related to, in urbanism, related to density, which is not unlike from low density or rural density to urban density, high density. It's not unlike the environmental transect where the flora and fauna change according to the geology or the land structure. So if you do ever go to the Panhandle, you'll notice that there are some offspring of Seaside, including one village called Rosemary Beach, another one called Alice Beach, and each one of them has been an evolution of the ideas and an attempt as well to establish a special visual character for each one. They're quite charming. So, but they're resorts. What about first home communities? What about people living and working in the same place? And so Kentlands, which is now has surpassed 20 years outside of Gaithersburg in Maryland, is one of the first ones which took the typical suburban house and rearranged it in its urban plan, mixing small and large houses. That was verboten by market studies when we started, the small townhouse next to the large house. Turned the school into the community so that children could once again walk to the school, and brought in a new type. I'm going to need to get my glass of water. That's what happens when you hurry. Called the Live Work, which is just that old-fashioned shop below the apartment or the office. And the success of these older ideas, this old urbanism in a new market, has contributed to the preservation and remaking of many old places, such as downtown Gaithersburg. Now, I tried to collect a few places closer to here to show you so that in case you know them or you might be going someplace near them and you may want to look in on them, the new town St. Charles in St. Louis, Missouri, which has quite a large part of it already built, is not unlike Kentlands, a first home community of mixed use and mixed density. Very charmingly carried out with various kinds of water features that deal with water management. Smaller homes, the idea that you could make these cottage courts mixed in with the larger single-family houses. And of course, keeping up with current fashion for small-scale farming, allowing chickens in the residential neighborhoods. Thought you might appreciate that they're actually crossing the road here. Also, not too far away, Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, in which a university campus, the purple buildings on the left of the plan, in which we did a plan for consolidating the campus and also building a residential community attached to it. And so what you see is a building, one of the campus buildings, in which the traditional architecture of the campus is maintained and evolved in new building, as well as looking to the residential traditions of that town to build the new neighborhood. Carlton Landing, currently under construction. Similarly, a new town has something that was developed by one of our offices called Learning Cottages. These are actually portable classrooms that, instead of looking like boxes that arrive on wheels, are beautifully crafted wooden structures with a traditional interior to make the learning environment part of the community. And then just to show this moving into a higher density, this is a town center plan in a new area outside of Dallas, Plano, Texas, a project called Legacy, which has a fairly intensive commercial development, including retail and offices, and 5-story buildings that include apartments, hotels, and so on. So these principles that, these smart growth principles, the principles of the new urbanism, and the transect, this idea of the transect, that you can apply them and translate them into different conditions and different densities, it's all part of the same picture. But what about the places that have fallen apart or that need to be rebuilt? In Cleveland, many years ago, we worked with some of the neighborhoods where only a few houses were left, but most of them had been destroyed, and these kind of empty urban neighborhoods. Cleveland Central, just very close to downtown, you can see the white streets are the streets we added to a network of blocks where the blocks were too big, and we identified that that was one of the problems that meant the old fabric that had been there couldn't sustain itself. There was also issues with the building types, and so we drew a plan, as you see on the right, that made it much more interconnected. And in these photographs, which are hard to see in this room, I imagine, you can't tell the difference between the new houses and the few old ones that remain and could be restored. This, in turn, was the kind of poster child project that that inspired Hope 6, the HUD program that brought new housing to public housing developments across the country. And this is one that we worked on in Greensboro, North Carolina, in which old public housing developments are remade to become mixed income residential communities with great success, I should add. It's a federal program that actually you can point to and say works well or worked well. What do you do in suburban sprawl? Well, you may not start redeveloping individual neighborhoods where there are houses and people living happily, but because of the cannibalistic nature of our retail development in the U.S., there are always old shopping centers around, or office parks these days, that are languishing, undervalued, underused, and those are the places for remaking, which can increase the benefit of suburbs. This was the very first one in suburban Boston, Mashpee Commons, in which you see the old 60s shopping center on the left, and on the right, already in the 80s, I need to update this slide, this shopping center being rebuilt with a grid of streets and a variety of uses. There are shops and apartments above the stores, even a small working cinema, all the kinds of things that people won't work in modern life because the economic component has to be bigger, but they do work in places like this. And even under more intense circumstances, this is a suburban part of Miami, the Kendall downtown, the Dadeland Shopping Center, where there's Metro Rail. And very often, these commercial sites are, of course, well sited for increased density because they have roads or sometimes even rail or bus rapid transit, which is already moving through them. And these shopping centers were often located well for better density. So downtown Kendall was something that a Chamber of Commerce started. This was not a government initiative, although the government participated, and many developers did as well. And so with many people participating, as I said at the beginning, in not just professionals, but the surrounding residents, property owners, tenants, and so on, we came up with a plan for remaking that the land that's on the left, in which there are very large properties, very little connectivity, and after showing a series of examples of similar scale, what was selected by the working group was the idea of savanna with its many multiple small greens, which you see here. And so the distribution of the old open space requirement of the old zoning code, which everyone was used to, its redistribution in small squares was managed so that every property owner would have, no one would be giving up too much or more than anyone else. And that ran the plan. There was a preliminary form-based code in which there were both lower buildings, 5-story buildings, and the surrounding neighborhoods allowed 20-story buildings with a setback to, they didn't want to see boxes cut off at the top. They wanted some form at the top of buildings. And so what emerged very quickly, and here you can see small blocks, very walkable. Okay, I'm zooming forward. I will slow down to show you several of Paul's slides, which show how you might take a pretty bleak-looking corridor, and this will go very quickly, and how the public sector can begin working on the remaking of a corridor, which then, if you have the proper regulations, which is what we were doing in Miami 21, would give the correct entourage to make an urban street. So this is the project that the Presley family is working on. You can see it's the orange dot relative to downtown Tulsa. These are the 23 acres. There are 2 lakes, ponds, large ponds on it, and already some buildings. And I should point out that the road on the left is the planned highway, so it's very well located for even future expansion. This is what it looks like. It's really a beautiful place. Very green. The blueberries are on the other side of the lakes. And this is a plan which shows a mixed-use front, not unlike the Seaside Square. Dr. Presley suggested that, with a variety of housing, some housing above the shops, offices, and then a series of single-family houses with some, the red pieces are public, potentially public or civic use. We've talked about the one at the far south being a chapel. That circle inscribes the 5-minute walk. The streets are laid out to be able to connect to the neighboring properties. This is a rendering that shows how it might look. That's 41st Street, and so there's a large frontage for the both the utilities and the potential expansion of the road. That green, this is such a small red dot, but this is the mixed-use piece. Volleyball courts, a kind of open-air structure for farmers market, and then there's a series, I'll talk about these buildings in a minute, and these are the single-family houses. These are the roads that could connect to the surroundings. More of a close-up with potentially an arcaded frontage in front of these buildings. There's existing buildings are here. That's what you see from the road now. And there's a small causeway that would remain pedestrian. This is looking from the green towards the causeway, possibly one of the first buildings, which would have an event space, some sort of gathering space at the ground level, and then offices above, and the market structure on the left. On the other side of the lake, which was on the cover of the report, the first slide I showed, I'm having a hard time following the dot. You'll see there's actually some footings already that were part of the site, which would support possibly a restaurant, small apartment building, and then the series of houses. Some of these might be overhanging the water. There's a beautiful stand of trees as well. This is the restaurant. Sorry. The buttons have a delayed reaction. There's a beautiful stand of trees here, which are being saved. This would be a small apartment, possibly the pool that would serve this neighborhood. And then we also studied the house types, showing as a first pass a series of modest small homes that would follow the traditional architecture of Tulsa and possibly be raised slightly off the ground, as you see here, and be, to begin with, smaller homes of a modest type. I think that's the last slide. Let me see. Yes. So thank you for the prompts.
After I know some of you have to go because we've kind of gone over our time. So if you've got questions, if you want to come up afterwards, Liz will be willing to take that. And she's going to be at a couple of other locations today, talking to some planners and so on. But that project is near the Silo and Bed and Breakfast in West Tulsa, and it is going to be transformative for that area. So thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Next week is Jake Henry Jr., President and CEO of St. Francis Health System, and he will be talking about Obamacare. And the following week is District Governor Ken Cauley and our mystery Rotarian. We know this Rotarian to be sharp with numbers. She keeps us in great financial order. But did you know our own Elaine Dishman is a ringer on the softball field, both fast pitch and slow pitch? And there she is. Thank you, Elaine Dishman. With that, we close this meeting. Have a great week.